So welcome to the Diagnostic Working Group meeting for July 31st, 2019. Peter can't make it today because he has a conflicting appointment, so he asked me to chair. We'll go through the standard agenda, which is on the issue that was posted. It is issue number 321. And so first off, we'll see if there's anybody who wants to share any announcements. Okay, if not, we'll move on to the agenda items. The first one is async hooks do not recognize execution contexts 22360. I don't think there's any update unless somebody else on the meeting has an update. Okay, if not, we'll move on to proposal inspect store flag number 298. This one, I think Peter was trying to get Alexi to our meeting, and I guess I don't see him today. Summer's probably a hard time, so we'll skip that one for this week again, unless somebody else has something to add.
I can talk with Alexi to see if he can attend the next meeting.
Okay, that would be great, because I think that's the next step on that one was we needed some more input or discussion with him.
Okay.
Figure out next step. Okay, sounds good. The next two, which are number 295 and number 211, are related to best practices, which are still high on our list. Unfortunately, it's a little slow going lately, summer and whatever. And also, Jarish has been temporarily pulled to some other work within IBM. So that's going to mean that we're not going to really, at least Jarish won't be able to loop back till pushing that forward until late August. So that's all the updates I have, unless anybody else has something to add. Okay, and then the last regularly scheduled item was Perfetto and Node.js, and we did ask for an update. And Kevin, who's working on that, or Kelvin, who's working on that, is basically just waiting for some changes on the V8 side because Perfetto is changing in response to some of the things he discovered while looking at integrating into Node.js. And, he's actively sort of waiting for that, working on it, and that's the update on that front. So let me just take a quick one. Okay, so that's the last regularly scheduled agenda things. The one thing we did add to the agenda, though, was a demo of the tool that Chris Heller had given us. He gave us a bit of a demo a while back, and he wanted to take a few minutes to give us an updated demo. So let's do that at this point.
Alrighty. Yeah, so last time I was at this meeting, I ran through some slides, so didn't have time to get to a demo, and so let me try to do that now. All right, so are we seeing a terminal? Is the
yes,
font size readable? All right. So feel free to butt in with any questions as I'm doing this. And so to kind of recap, what I'm working on is some tooling around diagnostic reports. If you generate diagnostic reports, you can use this tool to modify it, filter it. You can inspect it for potential problems. There's a few more things on the roadmap, such as like guided usage or some sort of wizard that would assist people in diagnosing these reports after, for example, an exception. Maybe the process crashes with an exception. So so it's got kind of two components. One is a CLI, and so I'm just going to look at the CLI right now. So Previously, when I presented this, the tool is called Gnostic, but if I want to name it that, I have to go through some enterprise process here. So they suggested I name it something very boring for now. So right now it is Report Toolkit. And so you can see here that we have several commands. And hopefully this is in constant development. So hopefully I haven't broken anything, but there's some tools here that you can do. So here's the first one is diff. And so if I want to take a diff of 2 reports, now you could do this with a visual diff tool or command line diff or something. But what's cool about this is that it ignores stuff that doesn't matter. I plan to add the ability to actually choose what doesn't matter to you. But when we take a diff here, and we can see that the default output will show this tabular thing where it's got the packages or the reports side by side. It shows the path, the key path in the report JSON object. It shows whether something has been modified, deleted, or added. And it just shows stuff side by side. Now you have control over whether or not you want to truncate things. If you don't want this tabular output, you should be able to just get JSON output, or maybe you want pretty JSON output, you can do that too. Or maybe you want CSV. I don't know if that works. Yeah, it seems to work okay. It's got some ANSI in it that I need to get rid of, but so that's kind of the idea of the diff, so you can see what changed between two report files. The next one I want to look at is redact. And so redact is, it allows you to take a JSON report, and then it tries to be smart, and it redacts fields that might have sensitive information, because of course the diagnostic report contains the environment, and your environment might have AWS keys or IBM Cloud keys or Google Cloud keys or whatever in it, and we don't want to transmit those. And so by default, the first thing that this tool does when it loads any JSON report is it will redact it. And you have to be explicit about turning that off if you want to turn it off. So for example, if I went into the help for diff, we could see that there is a flag, show secrets unsafe. And so it will not redact if you do that. And so all the commands otherwise by default will redact secrets. And so the next one I wanted to look at was redact. And so if I wanted to redact a report, it's just, let me see. Hopefully I have something here. If I want to redact a report, whoops. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that. But at any rate, you can see that it pulls, it redacts this information. If it matches something it doesn't like. These may be false positives in shared objects, but if we go up to like here, so it looks for session ID, maybe the display IDs, sockets, it wants to hide that stuff. So here's some tokens and stuff and things that shouldn't be in there, and so it takes them out. And it's just kind of, redact is kind of a sugar for another more powerful command, which is transform. And so let's see, transform, essentially, if I go to transform help, so there are various transforms that you can do to a report. And so you could take a report and output it in CSV format, or maybe you want new line delimited JSON. You can actually chain these transforms together. So if, for example, you want to get the stack hash, and so this is something that was mentioned When I presented at the Diagnostics, I can't remember who suggested it, but it was that they wanted to get like a hash of an exception, and so what they do is they want to look at these reports, and after the process crashes, and see if that uncut exception that crashed the process is unique. And so every exception will have a unique hash of it. And so there is always a stack of some sort when you create a report, even if it's not an exception. And so I should be able to say, I want the stack hash of, let me see here. Oh, I think it's confused about that. Okay, and maybe we make this. We do that. Okay, so here, this is an example of chaining transforms, and so we can see that there was one stack in there in this report. We generated an SHA key, and that should probably not be truncated by default. And this is what you can see there. And so if I want to actually just pull that out and see, well, what exactly is that thing? I can say include, I think it's JavaScript stack. Okay. No. Pretty. Okay, so this is actually the stack that that was in there, and so it takes this information and this information, and it basically concatenates the whole thing and generates this unique hash of your stack trace. And so you can take that and put it in your database or whatever, and run it through your analytics and metrics and see what's going on. There's also in the inspection stuff. And so what that wants to do.
Question.
Go ahead.
For the stacks, is it possible to do it on all the files in a directory?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's, I mean, I think in theory, let me see. So if I wanted to go in here and just run it against everything. So yeah.
Yeah, do it in the tabular form. Kind
of. What I want is stack hash, and then I want table.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. They're of course all this kind because the ones I'm working with for these fixtures, but we can see that some of them are actually just are exactly the same.
Right, some are different.
Right. So yeah, and so generally everything except the diff tool, which expects 2, no more, no less reports. Everything, all the other commands should be able to work with n number of report files. So inspect, and so inspect is like a thing that runs these heuristics against your report file, and it tries to detect problems in there. And so there are rules, and you can make your own rules, but there are some built-in rules. And so this is what we have. So we can assert, maybe we can pop an error if there's CPU usage is too high or memory usage are too high. If, for example, you have a library version, maybe you've compiled your own custom node and your library version mismatches what core expects to be in there. That can be a source of problems, and so it will detect that. It will also detect things like timeouts that are basically things that are sitting there waiting to do stuff, and they probably shouldn't be waiting that long. And there was an article Garish wrote about some of these use cases that I went and implemented rules for. So we can see that, and by default, it will just run all of them, but you can configure this via a config file. So maybe I want to look at, so this one should be clean. So no issues, great. This one should have a library mismatch problem. And so it looks like we need to do is to make this larger, but I think we can say like no truncate or something, and maybe there we go. Okay, so yeah, here we can see that the custom shared library libcrypto111 is conflicting with OpenSSL 1.121b, and so it expected a file with a different name essentially. And this uses some regular expressions that may not be perfect, but it works for me. So another one we have. And these are just kind of test picture files. Is this particular one has a long timeout, and so it says that there's a timeout somebody made, like via set timeout or what have you, and it's a timer with a future expiration in 3 hours. So there's a timer in your code, and it's going to execute 3 hours from now, which is probably not what you intended to happen. Now, maybe you did. If you did, then you can disable this rule in your configuration. But yeah, so this is just another test. So if there's a long timeout, but that timeout is unrefed, by default, it ignores it. And so that means if it's the only thing in that is in the event loop, we're expecting the process to end if that timeout is unrefed, and so we ignore it. That may not be correct, but that seemed okay to me. Grits, I don't know what that one was. I think that was testing the redaction stuff. So this is another long timeout test. Here's some okay. I may have actually disabled this rule. Yeah, I think I disabled that rule by default, but what it would do is it would look in there and say, oh, well, the CPU usage is too high. And what's neat about those particular rules, the CPU usage and memory usage one, is you can give them like 10 different reports, and you can tell it to take the average across those 10 different reports. Now you can do like a mean, a median, you can, or not a median, I'm sorry. You can do a mean, you can do a max and a min, or you can do like each. And so each would check if the CPU is over some amount on every report that you give it, or you could use mean to average all the reports, or max to make sure whatever the maximum CPU is across all those reports, make sure it's not higher than X. Just kind of details, but that's what I've got going on right now. This is nearly ready as far as being like an MVP. I think it's nearly there. There's just a couple more things I need to hammer out, and then after that, I've got a lot of documentation work like that I need to write. So, and I'm hoping to release this within the next month or two. It just kind of, the documentation is going to be a bit of a slog, I think. So, yeah, and then in the future, I want to do this guided usage stuff that somebody was suggesting to kind of help people debug these diagnostic reports. So that's what I got.
So my one question is, are you holding off releasing the repo until you get the docs, or is it that you can release the repo so people could look at the code while you work?
I kind of wanted to like just have everything ready for use. I'm happy to let people actually just like use it before then. But I kind of wanted to do like okay, here's this new thing, here's this website, and kind of make the rounds in social media and see if I can get a few more eyes on it than I normally would if it kind of trickled out there.
Okay. Okay, so you're waiting till you can get the baseline doc, and then you'll.
Yeah, it's just kind of baseline. Okay, this is a project that is ready for you to use. If it's undocumented, I don't consider it really ready to use at that point.
So I'm just taking notes. So like, if you want to try it out in the meantime, you can ask you directly for a copy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, if not, I guess that's it. Are there any other topics that people want to talk about this week? Sounds like not. So we'll call the meeting for today. Thanks for everybody attending, and we'll talk to everybody next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.